Okay, this is a very draft response to George on his presentation around the state of supplier collaboration today. I basically took many of the slides and arranged them into something that I could see as a story that might work for our supposed roundtable. I submit this with the utmost of humility, and hopefully you take it that way. But here's the story as I see it with your slides. So first, what happened to the network synergy? Just focus on the fact that marketplace participation is driving upwards, and the metrics around this, so you can talk a lot to that slide. I think the next thing to go into is then challenges that you noted, the challenges against that or making that hard. I would love to see some more exposition on the problem of content, because we think that that's something that Nipendo wants to respond to, and the onboarding and data feed maintenance effort. Those two are of particular interest to us, but whatever, those are the challenges, and that's great. I also grouped a lot of the extra slides that you had as other challenges, and so I put those as outside factors, outside challenges, whatever you want to say. And I basically arranged them so that you could see there was some increasing market uncertainty. And I made this zoom thing so you can click on it to show the graphic very quickly, come back and talk about multipolar regulations, and how that one looks like, and even saying, okay, well, multipolar means Americans are doing something, Europeans, Australians, the Germans, and you can even dive down deeper into that one as well. No need to do this, but I was just kind of showing off that this is a capability. The PLM-oriented sourcing, there was a bunch of slides around that. I found those very interesting, but as a kind of a side detour. So given the timing, maybe you can or cannot go into that. But I think that the key slide here is the one about how modern PLM engages the suppliers in many different ways. And then if you want to dive down deeper into how PLM is at the heart of smart manufacturing, or how sourcing is seeking co-innovation as part of the PLM cycle, and PLM even makes new business models. Very interesting story there too. So any one of those you can dive into as needed. Again, as timing goes, we should kind of think about that. And then the last one, trends in reshoring. You had 2 slides on that around reshoring stuff as well. So you get the idea. I'm just basically grouping them all on one page and making it possible for you to take a long or short detour as necessary to go from there. All right, so that jumps us far ahead into the next one. I think maybe we might want to rename this. I didn't take a shot at that, because this is really just the polling, where we're going to stop to poll people. And I think that the poll that we should do should be very simple. We may or may not have suppliers in the audience. I hope we do. But if we do, then we should give a poll that people can choose to answer question 1 or 2 or both if necessary. The number 1 is for suppliers. Really want to know how many marketplaces they have to work with. I'm figuring it's going to be way more than 5 for everybody, but it'd be interesting to see what this looks like. And then as a buyer, I'm focused on one of the questions that you had, and I modified it slightly, which is to ask it for a percentage of their vendors who collaborate with them digitally. And I make the call out here that email doesn't count when we talk about digitally, because we're trying to find out. My supposition is it's around 30% of the suppliers max that are digitally connected with buyers. And that's a big drag on the system. So then twisting from that to the agility at scale, I think it'd be good if you say, given the poll results, it might be good to kind of step back and look at our framework, the Forrester framework, for how to judge the maturity of your network. And so the Authenticate network is the basic one. Make sure that you know who you're doing business with. You can dive down into this. It's not much to do, but the authentication of who your business partners are, and maybe some information about them, like their social responsibility credentials and things like that, but not much more than that in that level. On the synchronized level, this is where I assume from my reading on this, because you didn't have many graphs on this, but I did find one slide that looks like that, which is kind of the synchronized level network, which is, and I really like this center thing. It was just, it's a responsive supply network balancing just in time with just in case, and having it synchronized supply chain movement going through it. I'm just kind of trying to put words in your mouth based on what I heard. But I think a lot of people may fall in this area, or they see this as the next area to go to. And as Nipendo, we sort of want to focus in on that synchronized area because we think that that's kind of the first biggest job that we have right now. But for you, Forrester, of course, you talk about the most mature and talk about the future and the goal of where people want to be, and that's on the share and schedule. I don't have any jump here because it's the next slides. Basically, the ability to collectively anticipate demand, to respond to challenges in each supply chain tier, and of course you could go into more detail on these as necessary, and then also talking about how that kind of mature network is different for different personas over time. I love this one about who does what in the days, on the weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis, and everybody's participation is very key there. And of course, risk and performance are a big factor in here as well. And then come back to the theme that you had before around PLM and how the sourcing people are needing to integrate more with what their stakeholders, the PLM folks, the ESG folks care about, as well as making a better supply chain, so that you're really choosing at the end of the day good suppliers, not just low cost or instead of low cost suppliers. And then finally ending it up with some good news. For folks that want supply chain management in their organizations and have been banging on the door for the funding, they should note that funding is coming. More firms are adopting things in this area just as much as they are in sales or sales ops kind of areas, which is good news for everybody. Certainly as a provider, I'm happy about it. So start your conclusion with some good news. And then talk about how there's other trends that are pushing them in this direction. People are coming to them claiming a need for better risk management, ESG, ecosystems that are innovative, self-service functionality. These kinds of trends are pushing things. And then the fact that there's new technology to help with all this around AI. I think all these kind of trends help for making procurement front and center here, and being able to bring some actual value. This does the same sort of thing, this slide. And then you end with this slide where you were ending already, around how to kind of orient yourselves and coach your colleagues into the more modern B2B practices, that sort of thing. So I think that's where I was ending it. What we would expect to do then is talk about our roundtable participant was going to be the gentleman from IAI, an aerospace company, and what we wanted to do is kind of lay out some graphic, some metrics around where they are. So looking at things like their P2P volume, the cost of buying things, the transactional metrics around how long it takes, for instance, to do an invoice, 70 days to voucher. It's too long. Number of suppliers, those kinds of things, kind of baseline things. And then talk about, once we got some Nipendo in there, we were able to, they grew their spend by over 50% in those 5 years, but they reduced their actual dedicated headcount and costs. You can see the cost, especially around AP, went down quite a bit. They increased their transactional efficiency a ton, and they actually included some supplier side efficiencies. For example, getting e-invoice suppliers up to 4.6K, more than 90% of their suppliers up to e-invoice levels here. So immensely proud of that use case, and the fact that they had maybe 12 different operating units, all with different needs in terms of content, going across different rules for transacting with those 12 different parts of their company. So how did we deal with that? We basically brought the connectivity from their buyer side to the supplier side. So we solved two problems, the connection and then the communication. So the connectivity is solved by having plugins to their ERP systems or whatever other ways they normally do business with on their side, but also plugins on the supply side. So the suppliers could go and have B2B integration, use a gateway that we host, or use some of the other more manual kind of, not manual, but the other kind of methods that go there. And it's one thing to have this connectivity with that connectivity. It's somewhat like a phone system. You could set up a phone and you could dial each other's number. But if you're speaking different languages, and each of the 12 different entities of IAI had different languages that they needed to hear things in, well, then you don't have communication. So the second thing that we did to kind of tie this all together was we brought in the Nipendo communicator system. Basically, it's AI bots that help us do a number of different things to help on the level of context, setting a context around things like what process we're talking about and which people are talking about that process, helping with the comprehension of what's going on in those processes, so translating things that might be sent out by EDI and transferred into XML, for example, or come in as a PDF invoice and go out and get transferred into an API that goes into their back-end SAP system, for example. So translation of that content, and then resolution of anything that didn't translate perfectly. The exception process was well managed as well. So that's helping with comprehension of the message, which is really key and central to what we're talking about. And then finally, the compliance, where we actually applied rules to these things as well. It's not so much that you're speaking the same language, but there's some things you're allowed to say and some things that you're not allowed to say, some things that are ethical and that aren't, and governance level helps enforce that, and then rules level helps to do a if then that then this, if this then that kind of approach to the different kinds of communications that are going on here. So all of that wrapped up into a tool that basically ties together that connectivity. It makes that phone system so much more useful because it has comprehension going across that that divide there. So that's basically how we did it. So I don't know how or when we will show this type of stuff, but those are the slides that are going to be available for us to jump in here. Hopefully it gives you an idea of what hit me when I saw your slides and everything, and I hope I didn't take too much liberty with that. I think I took some inspiration from, and this is your fault, giving me a slide that said bold at work. So maybe that's the boldness that I took here. But take it for what it is, and that's our first shot at things. Hope to continue to collaborate. Thank you.